Sorry.
Okay, well, thank you. I really appreciate you all being here, and I want to kind of let you know why I decided to get back into functional medicine. You know, many years ago, back in 2003, I was just looking at all my certificates on the wall so I could remember. I studied extensively in neuroendocrinology and biotransformation, and when it was really amazing stuff coming out back then when the DNA became unraveled. But there was not really a way to put stuff together to really help people in a succinct manner. So I kind of put it on the back burner. And recently I came across a Dr. Pompa, who's just an amazing guy. He's probably the leader in cellular detoxification in our country, if not the world. And some of you know who Dr. Marcola is?
Yeah.
Anyway, so he works with Dr. Marcola, and so the guy knows what he's doing. So I looked at what he had to offer and realized, wow, this is exactly what we need. You know, many years ago when chiropractic was first started back in 1895, I don't have the thing here, but, you know, people would come in, they'd get adjusted, and they'd get well. And to an extent, that still happens, but there's been so many toxins dumped into our environment over the last 50, 60 years. It's just our bodies have something called a chemical subluxation. It means the body's so toxic that the hormones can't get into the cells, they can't act on the cells, so we get stuck with chronic disease and these type of inflammations. And there was 1,452 named diseases up until about a year and a half ago when the CDC decided to change the diagnoses. So now there's something like 10,000. So a diagnosis is simply something describing your symptoms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through just a little bit of preliminary stuff to kind of get us on the same page, and then I'm going to talk about what is happening now and what we can do to help you become healthier, become the healthiest as you want. I'm going to read a little thing here that a friend of mine wrote to me, and I thought, wow, this is so amazing. He goes, imagine living into your 70s, 80s, or even 90s in the years with quality health. And what's the key word there?
Quality.
Quality, right? Quality health. Not dependent on drugs, medication, or surgery, just to get up and function throughout the day. Predictable health. You know, in 10, 20, 30 years, you're loaded with energy, loaded with vitality. You are retired, playing with your grandkids, or doing whatever you want. What if you had the freedom to do these things? And you weren't dependent on anybody. You're not dependent on your children or the government to take care of you as you are diseased and sick. So, you know, it's just amazing that the way our healthcare system is going. It's getting worse and worse. We're rated 50th in the world for health, the United States is. So there's 49 countries healthier than us. We take that's pretty good math, huh? We take 50% of all the medications in the world, and we're only 4% of the world population. So something's either really right with this or real wrong with this, and it depends on which side of the dollar you're on, I guess. But anyway, so I'm going to just go through a couple things here. So, you know, this is all about the cell. Like Dr. Pompa says, if you fix the cell, you will get well. And we're going to talk about the inflammation in our body. Inflammation drives disease. So inflammation is the cause of, and I'm not talking about shoulder or knee inflammation, but cellular inflammation that plugs up our kidneys, our livers, all of our organs. It plugs up our blood vessels, our arteries, and it allows disease to set in there. So we're going to talk about why that does occur and then what we can do about it. So the cell wall is really the key. Now the cell wall is made up of what we call phospholipids or oils. So they need to be permeable. We need to be able to get all of the hormones and all of the vitamins and minerals into our cells. Well, what happens is that's not happening. So I'm just going to go through a couple of these slides here. So this is a familiar face with, you know, all of the foods that he's eating. And I want to read you a short little bit out of this book, Nourishing Traditions. Does anybody have this book? It's an amazing book. And Sally Fallon, many years ago, my wife and I got this book, and it's changed the way we raised our kids and the way we live. Anyway, and the first 60 pages are amazing because it talks about what's gone wrong with our food in this country. My sister always said the FDA and the food people are in treason when it comes to giving us the food we need to eat healthy. So this is one example of that. And she says, our physical nature is such that we need foods that are whole, not refined, and denatured to grow, prosper, and reproduce. As the consumption of sugar has increased, so have all civilized diseases. In 1821, the average sugar intake in America was 10 pounds per person per year. Today it's 170 pounds per person per year, representing 1/4 of our average calorie intake. So 1/4 of the average person's calorie intake is sugar. And you might think, well, I don't eat sugar. But you ever go out to eat? Do you ever eat canned food? I mean, they put it in there so you'll, taste good. Go back. Another large portion of the total calories come from white flour and refined vegetable oils. This means that less than half of our diet must provide all the nutrients to a body that is under constant stress from the intake of sugar and all of the flours and the rancid oils and stuff. So now this is really interesting. She says the diet dictocrats, and she's quoting a gentleman named Dr. Frederick Stare, who was the former chairman of the Department of Nutrition at Harvard University, right? And he says, if we didn't prefer foods with added sugar, it wouldn't be added, he says. Remember, eating is one of the real pleasures of life. For most people, sugar helps other things taste better. Sugar calories are not different from other calories, from calories obtained from protein, starch, fats, or alcohol. This is the head of the Harvard Nutrition Department. Harvard's Department of Nutrition receives the bulk of its funding from the food industry, and nothing contributes to the profits of big processing conglomerates so much as sugar, cheap, easily produced and stored, and with infinite shelf life. So I give you Mr. Simpson here, Do you think that that stuff is got sugar in it? Is it the same as eating good, hearty, organic vegetables, So we need to really change what we're talking about. So here's a slide on hypoglycemia. I'm sorry if you guys can't see. But when they say you have hypoglycemia, this is what they recommend. Get some sugar, get a Coke, eat a candy bar, do something to get your sugar up so your blood level of glucose will get high again. And then here's kind of like some falsities, So this shows somebody with indigestion, the guy's got memory loss, all kinds of things going on, and we get so much false information from TV. It's pretty incredible. This is a label of a Time magazine that says, eat butter. Scientists labeled fat the enemy. Why they were wrong. Okay, so really butter is our friend. We need butter. We need fat in our brains. We need fat everywhere. Margarine that we were told to eat when we were kids, at least some of us, is basically canola oil, which is usually rancid. It comes from the rapeseed, injected with nickel and yellow dye. And that's what we were trying to replace, the cell walls in our brain function. No wonder that Alzheimer's and all these other kind of dementias are getting worse and worse and worse and worse all the time. So, this person's getting ready for the winter. That's what you want to eat. But maybe not that much compared to your size. We're also confronted with things like this, Monsanto, with the glyphosate, which is being found in so many of our foods, and even some of the organic stuff, the glyphosate is slipping into it. So we really want to protect ourselves from what we're putting into our body. I saw this in Rite Aid by our house. It was a huge sign about this big right when I walked out the door. Right next to this, they should have the other article from the Mayo Clinic that says that Tylenol is the #1 cause of acute kidney failure. So here they are recommending this, but we know it's the #1 cause of acute kidney failure. Here's an interesting study. This is overdose of heroin from 2001 to 2013, overdose from cocaine, overdose from opioids has gone up dramatically. That's an addiction in our country that's just gone off the top. And here's prescription drugs, 2013. So, the drugs are definitely not solving anything. They might be creating more problems, and they also are probably covering up your symptoms. But I got to tell you, when you need to go to emergency medical and you got a broken bone or a cut that you can't fix with super glue, Western medicine is awesome. It's like, it saves people's lives, no doubt. But it gets a little bit chronically used. It gets kind of scary. I saw this article on TV. I was watching a big football game or something. It says diabetes, it causes kidney failure, heart attack, ketoacidosis, stroke, coma, blah, blah, blah. These are the drugs that they use for it. And this was Davison Grump, attorney at law, saying if you have kidney failure from taking these drugs, call us. So there's a perfect example of a problem like diabetes that can be controlled naturally most of the time, and then a drug made for it that is causing more trouble than the diabetes itself. And that's pretty typical. You know that 1 out of every 3 commercials on TV is either a drug, advertising a drug, or it's an attorney telling you to call them about the drug they're advertising. So this is a myth. Does alternative health or natural health, a lot of times I hear, well, it takes too much time or it's too expensive. So, the world is dying, people are sick and suffering, they are broke, bankrupt because we didn't get to them in time. So this is really important stuff. This is an interesting article that came out of Huffington Post that said retired couples would need $416,000 for health care costs if their drug costs were average, and we know ours aren't. If the same couple lived longer than 3/4 of retirees, they would need $614,000 in health care costs the way that our health is going. This here says that medical bills lead to 75% of all bankruptcies in our country are due to medical costs. And so 2.5 million Americans go bankrupt every year. 78% had health insurance. So health insurance isn't really going to get us there. This other study says that 2/3 of these people who went bankrupt owned their own houses, and 3/5 of them had gone to college. So I'm just trying to get the idea, and I know you're all here and I'm preaching to the choir, but there's other people out there that need our help. So, we really need to talk and reach them. It says the middle-class American health insurance offers little protection. So many of the policies have loopholes, co-payments, and deductibles that illness, could put you in the poorhouse, unless you're Warren Buffett. Now, Warren Buffett's got prostate cancer. So would you like all the money in the world and trade his life? So it's just kind of something to take a look at. So now we're going to go into the real point of today's talk, is talking about healthy cells. So you have the normal cells and then unhealthy cells, or cells that can create disease, or in this slide, cancer. So just about every chemical reaction that occurs every day in your body, and there are millions of them all the time, has an acid as a subproduct. So when you blink, when you breathe, when you eat, when you exercise, your body is going to produce an acid. Then your liver and your kidney are supposed to, bad blood comes in, all of that stuff comes from the cells into your blood and goes through your liver. Your liver cleans out that blood and makes it good again and puts it back up into the body to go around and heal those cells again. Or the blood goes through your kidney, and then your kidney takes the acids out and you urinate out those acids. So that's how it's supposed to work. But because of inflammation, our body is not able to get rid of those toxins. And that's where we really get into the trouble. So here is an example of a wall. I don't want to get too much into science, but when insulin, see, every cell in your body has little trap doors or sliding glass doors on it. In fact, there's something like 40 million estrogen receptors on every cell in your body. Can you imagine that? A cell could have 40 million estrogen receptors, let alone everything else. So what happens, and our body runs on sugar, right, glucose. So what happens is a little sugar molecule gets here, and then there's the insulin is chivalry-like. The insulin goes, oh, allow me, and the insulin opens the door so the sugar can get in your cell, and then pow, that sugar turns into energy, and that drives your body, okay? Now what happens when you get inflammation in the cell walls and inflammation throughout your body, which we know just about all of us have, one insulin can't open the door anymore. So pretty soon your pancreas is demanded to produce more insulins. Pretty soon 5 or 6 insulins, figuratively speaking, can no longer even open that rusty sliding glass door, so the doctor gives you prescription insulin to push it in. So it's not necessarily that we're not making enough insulin, it's just that our cells can't see it. Now you have something called T3 thyroid hormone, and there's a sliding glass door specifically for that. For estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, all of those hormones get into the cells through this cell wall. So if you can imagine, anybody ever had poison oak or known somebody to have poison oak so bad their eyes puffed shut? Okay, so that, imagine that your cells looked like that, looked like it had poison oak and your eyes were swollen shut. Now try to open your eyes and see. It's the same thing. You know, you can't possibly see out of a swollen eyelids, right? Well, the cells can't take in that nutrition if they're swollen. Does that make sense to you guys? So we got to learn how to detoxify the cells, and that's where this Dr. Pompa and the True Cellular Detox is, it's just phenomenal. It's just amazing. There's a little guy inside your cell, and I'm not going to get too into it, but it's called a mitochondria. Anybody ever heard of those? Yeah, mitochondria are the power plant. Those are the dudes, you know, so, or the dudettes. Yeah. But what happens is when the sugar gets in, it actually goes to your mitochondria, and mitochondria makes something called ATP. Right. And that is power. That is like the stuff. That's rocket fuel. Now what happens, because our cells get so toxic, that the toxins can't, that when, you know, like if you had your car and you put a hose in the gas tank and you ran it into the compartment you're driving in, you're driving down the road with that exhaust getting in the car, that's not very healthy, right? That's what's happening to our cells, because the energy gets in here and it makes some energy and it puts out toxic waste, but it can't get out of the cell either. It can't get in or out. I mean, we're struggling for survival. You wonder why I slept 8 hours, why am I completely pooped? Why can't I move? Why do I just have my get up and go's gone up and went? You know, it's like, what can I do to get this fixed? So what happens now is even the mitochondrial walls they're finding are filled with inflammation. So the cellular detoxification is vital. It's not just doing a colon cleanse or, you know, some kind of enema or something like that, which is all good because it does clean out and make a little more room for something else. I mean, after all, if I had a kitchen sink and it was plugged down here and I kept trying to wash the dishes and there was no way for that to drain out, I got dirty water and dirty dishes no matter how many times I wash them. So we've got to make sure that the digestive system works first. In fact, the first phase of the cleanse that we're going to talk about is the prep phase, where we're healing the wall, we're healing the digestive system. The digestive system has been coined the second brain. I don't know if you guys know that or not. It is just phenomenal what it does. And in fact, 90% of all your serotonin receptors, which are your feel-good transmitters, are found in your intestines. So if your intestines are swollen and inflamed and toxic because you're not having 2 to 3 bowel movements a day like you should, you know, I always ask my patients, how many bowel movements do you have a week? Because they'll usually say 5, a lot of people. But if I say how many a day, they say 1, when they probably aren't a lot of people, right? So my point is those colon cleanses and everything are good. We want to get this out. But if you don't finish the job, you know, it was a nice day. You know, it was really nice that it didn't rain today, but it's raining tomorrow, you know? So that's what we want to do, is talk about how this all works. But I just want to get to this point because it's a real pretty little slide and I like that. So I'll leave that in the background while we go forward. So that's like a mitochondria. All these little guys in here are where the energy goes, and that's where everything of life comes from, is that. So what I want to talk about now is that we have these swollen walls. Basically, when you eat food, it is broken down. Let's say I forgot to put the stomach. The stomach, basically, a lot of your food ends up going through your digestive system, Well, your large intestine, oops, not LA, LI. Your large intestine basically breaks down all of your food into amino acids, fatty acids, vitamins, minerals, and water, and redistributes it back into our body. So the friendly flora, the microbiomes, they call them, the little teeny bugs that live in our body, we can't live without them. It's a symbiotic relationship. We can't digest food without them. So when we have the right bacteria in there, you eat something, and then it's going to be broken down, and it's going to move back out into the body, and then our body's going to use that for energy. Well, what happens when we have taken tons of antibiotics, we eat foods that are sprayed with chemicals, we eat white flour, we eat all that sugar, just we can go on and on and on. The colon gets kind of stodgy, it gets stuck, and then the friendly bugs that live in there, that look like this, by the way, I actually know what they look like. They look like that. They actually eat your food, and basically they poop nutrients. Those nutrients go back into our body and give us life. But when we get sick, take a bunch of antibiotics, and people go, yeah, I'm taking acidophilus, and still some healthcare providers don't recommend people take acidophilus and stuff, probiotics, after they take antibiotics or anything, or get surgeries, But what happens is these guys start to die out when you get sick, and then these guys come in. These guys are the other ones. They look like this, as you can imagine. Those are called, I love this, opportunistic anaerobes. They're in your gut, eating your food, but they poop toxins. Those toxins get back into our body and make us sick. They keep us inflamed, and that whole process goes again. As your intestines aren't working well, you start to get colitis or chronic, even up to Crohn's disease, or ulcerative colitis or gastritis, all that stuff. It's all names, right? Describing symptoms. Pretty soon the holes in your intestines swell up. And if you can imagine your intestines swelling up, and this is how tight those little holes are, they swell up, and now you got very large molecules leaving your gut, getting back into your bloodstream. These are very unhealthy, and they cause just everything in the world you can imagine. By the way, one of the things that's the last phase of this cellular detox is the brain phase. Because what we know is heavy metals like mercury, aluminum, lead, all these things love fat cells. They love fat. So where do you think most of the fat is in our body?
Brain.
In our brain. It's made of fat, right? So there's something called the blood-brain barrier. It looks just like this. And when the blood goes up through the brain, basically only certain things are supposed to get through those blood-brain barriers, that's been ever since Lucy was found, right? 20 million years ago, however long ago it was. We haven't changed, our DNA hasn't changed in all that time, right? So, but how many new chemicals do we have? Billions of them are made every day. In fact, we put something in water and chlorine attaches to it, it's a new chemical, and it's usually cancerous. So these things find their way right through the blood-brain barrier. I'm glad I can say that. They get right into your brain, and they make you toxic, and wonder why we're getting dementia and Alzheimer's and all these other things. That right now we know that anti-inflammatories, we know that the chronic use of digestive aids, aspirin, Tylenol, all these things are now being linked to dementia and Alzheimer's. How many people do you know take 2 to 3 Tylenol every day, or chronically? They're going to affect their brains. So, at any rate, we need to figure out how to clean all this out. Does that make sense to you guys? Mm-hmm. All right, so the first phase is we're going to repair the digestive system. So, because what happens when people do these, and there's really nothing wrong with them, it's just that they're not complete enough. But they might do a 21-day cleanse, or what was that one with the honey, the vinegar, and the cinnamon, is that what it was? Or cayenne pepper? Those are good cleanses. They're going to kind of scrape the surface, but they're not getting deep cleanse, like a deep cleaning. Like your dentist, right? When you got to get everything scraped out of there. So we need to figure out how to do that. And if you were to mix all that up, if I was to pull the toxins out of my brain too quickly, but I haven't fixed this, what's going to happen?
Redistribute in the body?
They're going to redistribute wherever they can, and if we just got it out of the brain and there's none in there, it's going to go right back in there. So we've got to clean this part out first. So the first thing we do is get it's basically repair the digestive system. We assume that everybody's going to need that repair. Why mess with it? So the first month of the cleanse basically is helping regenerate the cell walls in the digestive system, clean out the kidney, help the liver detox correctly, but at the same time getting all that stuff out of the body. The second phase is where they go in basically and they clean up the inflammation around the cell. See, we can't do this and not have this work. So we clean up the inflammation around the cell and we can flush that out. Only after you've got that handled do you want to mess with the brain. So after this is pretty clean, you can go in and we can start to detoxify the brain, and the brain now, the stuff will get out. And the brain phase, they call it, it's a 1 month phase, but usually people need more. I mean, anybody besides me live in the 60s around here? So maybe you need more than one, I don't know. It just depends. Everybody's a little different on that. I noticed some of you didn't raise your hands, it's okay. You're safe. But you know, it's not just that, it's all the other toxins that we're exposed to. And so that's basically how the cleanse works. Let's see if I had any, oh, there we go. And you know what, you want to go through life, basically, I love this quote. It's like, life is to be lived. You should go into the grave, running and sliding into the grave, or martini in one hand, chocolate in the other, going, woohoo, what a ride, you know. But that's figuratively speaking, you don't want to be infirm, or you don't want to just kind of slowly have one organ or another, you know, fail on you, and we know that that's what's going on with a lot of the people, our elder family members and friends we know. So anyway, that's pretty much the main part of the cleanse. I can definitely answer some questions, but you know, here at our office, that's McCollum Family Chiropractic. I love that we get big results thing there at the end. So anyway, yeah.
Okay, when you're talking about the brain, because I understand this detox is in 3 parts.
Right.
This is new to me too, because I'm just starting it. So the first part is preparing the body so that your digestion and elimination will be able to withstand the toxins.
Correct.
Right? Okay. Now when you get to the brain, the brain, I understand why it's last, because you don't want to be flushing a lot of toxins out of your brain and not be able to get them out of your body.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
But what about the brain, what about this, because I was talking with Andy about this brain fog. You know, could you define a little bit about brain fog? Because a lot of us don't have like Alzheimer's yet, thank goodness. But,
Can you
know,
repeat that?
yeah. Is it just like memory lapse? You know,
Yeah.
because I understand that hormonal changes do that too, but if the hormones aren't working right, it's because cellular level we don't have.
Thank you for bringing that up, and you brought up 2 points that I really wanted to address.
Okay.
And you know, but as far as the brain fog, that's just the neurotransmitters not neurotransmitting fast enough or correctly. I know our house is pretty long, and I remember 20 years ago, I'd get something and I'd walk all the way to the bedroom, and I get to the bedroom and go, what did I come here for? Anybody ever do that?
Oh, no.
Now it's like this. I go, I'm going to go to the bedroom. What was I going to go there for? You know, it doesn't. So it's changing. So brain fog is once you get the chemicals out of your brain, especially see the heavy metals, the mercury that we know is in there, and the other biotoxins. This even gets mold out of your brain. And I should explain how that works actually. So there's this product called zeolite. You guys ever heard of it? It's a kind of charcoal type thing. And basically, you know, when you have a charcoal filter on your water, the water goes through there, and all of the charcoal's filled with little compartments. And the compartments grab the toxins. The toxins gravitate to those things, and they love the carbon, and they stick to it, right? And then you can get it out of your system. So what the brain, it's not just the brain phase. this first phase, you're not doing any detox, you're just repairing stuff. The second phase, which is the second month, you are now detoxing, you're taking the zeolite that's going to detox the digestive system, and then you're going to take more in the brain phase. But what it does, it crosses the blood-brain barrier, and it will kind of go in there and scrape out all of the, or as much as we can. It's a process. If you could get 5% back, it'd be pretty good, right? But it's like a process where Dr. Pompa says he's done several brain phases, and maybe you'll do one every year, because we're constantly exposed to new toxins. It's not like you can be a squeaky clean car and then not collect dust. So you got to keep it up. Now let me address one more thing on that. And we brought up the fact of hormones, and I thought of female hormones for a minute. So the example that Dr. Pompa gives on this is, let's say, anybody here ever in a family, by show of hands?
Anyone what?
A family? No? Okay, that's awesome. You all fell to earth. I'm kidding, it's a joke. So, usually one person raises their hand for crying out loud. But, there you go. Good excuse. That was great. Awesome.
That was, yeah.
So if you've been in a family and you had children and you were asking them to do something like clean up their room and they didn't pay attention, what do?
Shut the door.
Yeah. What else do you do? Come on, you can say, you yell, right? You start yelling at them. So pretty soon, they'll go, oh my God, Mom's mad, and they clean up the room. And then after a while, you're yelling at them to clean up the room, and they go, oh yeah, she'll get over it. That's the way hormones work. So when you have hormones that your body's not, it could be insulin, I gave that example, it could be female hormones, male hormones, whatever. Your cells are starving for those hormones. So the doctors, and even some of the creams we use, they give you more hormones, more estrogen, let's say. So you lather your body with estrogen, but it still can't get in the cell because it can't hear it, it can't get in there. You got to get the toxins out of the cell. Then the hormones that your body is actually making will probably be absorbed correctly. But we got to get the toxins out of there, so a little bit will do. More and more and more is kind of not, that's the way America is, right? Big gulps.
Too much is never enough.
Yeah, big gulps of estrogen. Now the problem with the estrogen is it's carcinogenic, right? Especially the stuff that you get that's not, synthetic, that is synthetic. And the big part about that is when your body tries to get rid of estrogen, your liver detoxifies estrogen, it gets into your large intestine. Well, guess what happens if you're not clean, if your digestive system isn't working well? Guess what happens to that estrogen? Gets absorbed back into your body again. And it's now got a Z in front of it, or an X actually. It's called a xenoestrogen. X's aren't good in the body, right? So now you've got a carcinogenic estrogen floating around in here and you can't ever get it out of your body because you're not going to the bathroom. So getting it clean, getting it simple is really the key. What was your other question?
Oh, well, yeah, I got the idea about the things that bind, it goes in the cell and it binds with things and pulls them out. Okay, but can you describe what some of these nutrients are that are in these things in the phases? Like